Welcome to my channel. Hi everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Legends and Tragedies. And today we're going to be continuing on with let me see, the seventh part of the Marilyn Monroe biography. And if you can recall, last time I spoke about her early movies, and she hadn't actually reached stardom yet. She was trying to cope with the passing of her agent, Johnny Hyde. And so she did a few movies between 1947 and 1950. And so we reviewed a few of those. She wasn't exactly ecstatic with her progress at that point, but she couldn't complain that much, right? She didn't have that much money to herself, and so what she really needed was a great big new career launch that would really jumpstart her path toward fame. And so let's now start getting into the 50s, and we are going to discuss her some more of her movies and a few more of her relationships. And we're going to find, I hope you will find, as interesting as I did find it, very, very entertaining, because you never know exactly why things occurred the way they did with Marilyn Monroe's early career. And so we just have to sort of look at it objectively and figure out from here on what really was going on in her mind, right? And so, as Marilyn drifted towards the 50s and into the 50s, a new movie opportunity came her way, which would be her role in Clash by Night. And now, in these days, guys, She was every bit part of the movie publicity scene, and she actually, delved right into it. And I guess she was a natural. Um, she did, although she did have stage fright, she did enjoy being in front of the cameras. It was almost as though she was a natural born actress. The camera seemed to love her wherever she went, whatever she did. And so you know the press also greedily wrote columns and bits about her, and that sold. It really sold. And now Marilyn, um, the real Norma Jean, Marilyn Monroe, was more aware than ever of how her appeal, appearance wise, could really sell. And so it amazed her. She, she had been a model for quite a few years, but this was new. This was different. This was a kind of fame that, because they didn't have social media in those days, it took her by surprise. And so she loved every minute of it. Um, of course, it got to be a bit much at times, but she was adored by the public and by the critics as well, by people who began to see cinema and theater as a very refined and popular um, art form. And so across the board, they were finding very positive things to say about her acting performances, and so she was put on a very high pedestal at times. But the insecurities that she had grown up with all of her life were still essentially there. She did get shy. She did get nervous, and but once she was made at home and forgot her nervousness, uh, like I said, she was a born natural. And it was in these days that she did attempt to contact the actor by the name of Stanley Gifford, who she had the idea that was probably or could be her biological dad. And so he cruelly rejected her. He was very harsh with her. And what I believe is that maybe he might have thought it was a publicity stunt. Guys, it would have ruined his career, right? And so I doubt at this point that he really actually ever was her biological dad. But I believe it was something on her one of her papers, her birth certificates, that made her feel that way. And so she began to study acting as a way to distract her thoughts from all that disappointment and rejection from Gifford. She began to study acting professionally with Michael Chekhov, who was the nephew of the Russian playwright who studied in Russia under Konstantin Stanislavski. And so 1952 turned out to be a very memorable and uh, it was, how do I say this? It was a momentous year for Marilyn Monroe and her career. And so she completed a total of 5 films and survived actually 2 very potential um, and horrific scandals that could have wrote her off as an actress. And so she did get married again. And so her second husband was an aspiring journalist and photographer. And so I'm going to tell you a bit more about him. So 1952 really was an important and uh, very, very significant year for Marilyn, both personally and professionally, because she did make 5 films that year, and Clash by Night was by far the pivotal, um, the film that actually um, had Marilyn Monroe explode into the movie film industry. So that movie was very, very important. And also, she met and married her second husband, divorced him, and met her third husband. And so that's why it was such an important year. And so she had been loaned out professionally to RKO for the movie Clash by Night, partly because Fox wanted as much exposure for her as was possible for her. And so also because the studio wanted to see how she would make out in a serious drama before they cast her in a psychological drama of their own that they had waiting for production. So maybe it was kind of written with her intended in mind. And so that would have been a big step for her, right? And so the film Clash by Night had a very wonderful, amazing, powerful cast. And Barbara Stanwyck, Paul Douglas, and Robert Ryan were all going to be co-starring with Marilyn Monroe. And it would be directed by a German director and Fritz Lang. And I'm sure that you've heard his name and seen his name flash across those movie credits so many times. He was a big German director at the time. And so, guys, this story was a story, the movie line was filled with passion and emotion and jealousy and right up Marilyn Monroe's alley, right? And so it was removed from the writer's original setting of Staten Island to the cannery of a small California fishing village. And so Marilyn Monroe was to play Peggy, a young, fun-loving cannery worker. And naturally, she was terrified because um, Stanwyck, how do I say this? Stanwyck really was a very overpowering figure, and she made such a powerful impact on Marilyn, such an amazing impression on her that she was very shy. She was very timid, and so it terrified her to be on screen with her and also off. And also, Paul Douglas, there was a lot of friction with Paul Douglas for some reason. And Paul Douglas absolutely hated Marilyn Monroe right on sight. Guys, I don't think that she was very used to that. I don't know what happened. There was no information here at all. And Lang, um, the director, banned Natasha, her dramatic coach, from the set when things got to be a bit much, guys. Now, Natasha had not drawn many popularity votes from any of Marilyn's inner circle or her professional co-workers, whatever. Nobody really liked Natasha. And whether it be overprotectiveness or jealousy or whatever. People did not like the attachment that Natasha had with Marilyn. You know what I'm saying? So it was not a good vibe to have Natasha on set. And so I would imagine that besides that attachment, there were another couple of good reasons why Natasha was banned. And one of them was that um, because Marilyn tended to listen more to Natasha than to the directors. Um, I don't know if she disobeyed them. This chapter is not that clear on that part, and I don't think there's that much information on it anyway. But professionally, she tended to lean more on Natasha, and I think that's not a good thing for an actress who's trying to break into a big career like this, because you need to be able to be independent enough to follow direction from your employer and also have the self-confidence to break away from that emotional attachment. You know what I'm saying? And so Natasha was not good for her that way either. And so another thing was that whenever Natasha was on set, there would be all this press and all this rigmarole about pictures and gossip column, and it really irritated Paul Douglas, and this probably is why he took to disliking Marilyn Monroe quite a bit. And so one day he snarled, why don't the photographers ever take any pictures of us? They're just taking a picture of that blonde over there and not us. What are we, And in a way, he probably had a very good point, because Barbara Stanwyck was also a beautiful blonde and nobody really paid much attention to her. So it's amazing that even before the days of social media, Marilyn was having it all, right? And so, but Barbara Stanwyck didn't take that attitude. She was very understanding, and she was pretty motherly. She also calmed Paul Douglas down quite a bit, and she was a good person to work with. She kept a cool, level-headed mind when she was working alongside Marilyn Monroe, and so I guess Barbara Stanwyck could really understand these things. As for Marilyn's role itself, she really managed to attract some very high quality and serious criticisms. Um, the one critic would write that she was a forceful and dynamic actress, and handled crisis well in the movies. And so, in the movie, I should say. And so, she actually molded herself. She was able to mold herself into a gifted star. And so, because she was new, she gained such popularity. And I think, in a way, it was the exact opposite of what happened to Jean Harlow, right? Jean Harlow could never impress the critics. But apparently, Marilyn Monroe really had something. And so it wasn't just that magic on camera, that chemistry. It was also acting, guys. Even though she had not been professionally trained at this point, she had what it took. And so, that's a good thing. And I think it was because of Barbara Stanwyck and because of Fritz Lang and because of the movie script that she was able to produce such a successful character on screen. And so she didn't do it all by herself, right? And one more thing that really added to the quality of Marilyn's acting was the fact that it was set in the natural landscape of California, where she grew up, and where um, the setting of many of her modeling shoots. And so more and more, we're going to see that Marilyn Monroe developed a certain sort of relationship um, with the landscape that surrounded her, whether it be a forest, a beach, um, the canyons, a desert. All of the movies that she made had very earthy and overwhelming and beautiful and outstanding landscape. And that did something to her. That brought her alive. She felt alive in settings like that, and so that had a lot to do with it. And so, and she, you know, it goes on to explain this chapter goes on to explain that she did many modeling shoots with one particular photographer in the Mojave Desert. And so that's just one example of how it affected her on camera. So anyway, just thought you would want to know that. And so the photographers that did those pinups during her modeling years were Conover and the Danes. And so I guess she had very special relationships with those photographers as well. And because she gave a, a very, how do I say this? She made blue jeans trend, guys. Now, okay, pants and trousers were in style in the 30s and 40s, yes, for women, but not, after Marilyn wore them and did pinups in those blue jeans, jeans took on a different meaning altogether, fashion-wise. And so, I guess she did what Jean Harlow did, fashion wise. And so, but all she did was wear blue jeans. And so, what, I guess it's even the same way today. In the 40s and 50s, whatever stars wore was copied by the general public, just like Jean Harlow's platinum hair. Although I don't think many people put bleach on it, real bleach. And but her style, guys, was instantly copied, and that meant that she had been a success. You know what I'm saying? She was admired not only for her acting, but for her ability to make fashions trend. Now, before this movie was released, after it was finished, but before it was released, the producer, Jerry Wald, received an anonymous phone call. And here's where things got a little dramatic. And what happened was, in this telephone call, the voice claimed that there was proof in existence that Marilyn, or then Norma Jean, had posed for a nude calendar which was hanging up in bars. I shouldn't have said nude, but I said it. I want to tell the truth, right? It was hanging up in taverns and bars and garages all over the country. So that wasn't too good. So apparently in 1949, Um, while she was making those early movies and while she was in between jobs and modeling, um, she did pose um, for this Golden Dreams calendar. And we may talk a bit more about it later on because the story didn't actually break here completely. It broke when she did the movie Niagara. But anyway, this caller demanded $10,000 to keep quiet. So that's too bad that a star or a person could not do what they wished with their own body in Hollywood in those days. And maybe it's still like that. I don't know. I'm not a Hollywood star. So that's what I'm saying. She, her career was saved. Uh, it was saved for the time being, but there was an attempt to blackmail the producer for $10,000. That's just what I'm saying. And so I want everybody to be clear right now that there are so many more options at making money nowadays. And nobody really ever needs to resort to this sort of photography and modeling. But when the producers and the director urged Marilyn Monroe to deny flat out that she ever did any such posing, um, she refused. And you know what? I can see the logic behind that because why should she hide or why should she have hidden what she did out of a dire need to pay rent? And we all know that she was hard up for money, guys. She took those modeling jobs out of desperation. She took the fireball role out of desperation. She did not like that role, but she needed the money. She didn't have money for rent. She couldn't eat. She couldn't buy clothes. And in those days, she was doing um, various jobs for the studio. She needed to have outfits and whatever have you. She needed to go out and buy these things for herself because if she didn't, she wouldn't have that job, right? And so it was kind of a catch-22 situation in a way. And but anyway, um I think that Marilyn Monroe was a very, very clever and astute businesswoman. Not only was an artist and a dreamer and a creative mind and soul, she was a really clever business person, and she knew that if she tried to dodge these I also have a feeling, guys, that she might have broken the story herself. She might have made a call or asked somebody to do it for her just so that she could get more publicity. I don't know, but it does sound like her. And so anyway, guys, what happened was that she refused. The picture was already done, so that's what makes me think that it was her who broke the story, but I don't know. I don't want to accuse anybody, but if it was, I would almost say good for her. But still, she wanted her fans to know, first off, that she didn't come from an easy childhood, right? Now, that's why in the first episode, when I was explaining that a lot of the stories that we heard about Marilyn Monroe may not have been completely true or maybe halfway true, they were made up to cover this indiscrepancy, to make her more appealing and more sympathetic to the public. And that was the push that she needed to get right into stardom. And of course, the movie helped a lot because it made everybody realize what a good actress she really was. But they were the public guys, the general public, ultimately and eventually, when the story did break, they fell madly in love with Marilyn because she came from a very humble, and she did, guys. She did. 12 foster homes. She came from a very humble and very um sophisticated poverty. I don't know how you want to call it. She was always well provided for, but she was very familiar with the fashion trend of hand-me-down. Okay, so if anybody could make a hand-me-down trend, it would be Marilyn, right? So, but she really took that story and manipulated it to work for her rather than against her. And that's something that not everybody, not even nowadays, not everybody can successfully do, right? That was the one public scandal that almost destroyed her, but in my opinion, it made her. It made her. It made her. And mind you, not everybody saw the photo. Men did. Um, places where gyms and athletic clubs, things like that. Not the general, it wasn't portrayed, of course, in the general public, in, say, for instance, restaurants. That sort of thing was well hidden from the public. And so that kind of helped her. You know what I'm saying? And so that was the one big scandal that almost took her career down. So it's alleged. The second one would would be a little more complicated, and it was less easy to solve because there was another person involved directly. And so this is the story. Late in 1952, Marilyn was having a relationship with a journalist, and this journalist discovered Marilyn's mother, Gladys Baker, who was living in a mental institution, a mental hospital. And I don't know if Gladys Baker had been released to work and then go back. I don't know the story at all. It's not published. It's not publicized. So we don't know the facts. But he found out. And so it became very awkward. So a studio biography issued by Fox in 1951 placed a great emphasis as a result on her childhood in the orphanage and foster homes due to her status as ward of the state. And it described Gladys Baker as a helpless invalid and her father, who had been killed in an automobile accident shortly after her birth. I doubt that. And so Marilyn has never known very well, briefly, her mother or at all her father. And so that meant more sympathy for Marilyn, right? So there's the second story that almost ended her career, but it shouldn't have. But instead, it helped her. It helped her gain that trust and that sympathy from her audience. And so, guys, again, instead of lying and denying it, Marilyn simply said, unbeknown to me, which was not actually the truth, my mother spent a good many years in the hospital. And so Marilyn kind of tried to detach herself as a child from her mother in her story, but really, she refused to deny it. And so she had a very different approach to how to deal with negative publicity. And really, actually, negative publicity is quite helpful. Um, I don't know if it helped Britney Spears any. I would imagine it did help her an enormous amount when she was trying to gain sympathy from her fans, right? And so the same thing happened with Marilyn Monroe. Although Marilyn wasn't the patient, it was her mother. Still, it was a sympathetic enough story that could have helped her career. And I think ultimately it did. And guys, I think that it's starting to get a little dark. And so rather than driving home in the dark, I'm going to just try to finish this maybe later or tomorrow. I'm not sure which, because I still have quite a few more pages to go. And so maybe I'll just, you know, continue in another episode because I don't want this episode to be so long. So maybe I'll just sign off for now and we will continue with the rest of the story in another episode like that. I don't keep you here all night, right? So anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you've enjoyed this segment of Legends and Tragedies, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.